You've been here before. It's 11 p.m. You told yourself today would be different. You had the list. You had the plan. You woke up with that feeling, that rare, electric clarity that made you think, this time I've actually got it. And for a few hours, maybe even a few days, you did. You were disciplined, sharp, focused. And then something happened. Maybe it was small, a bad night's sleep, a conversation that went sideways, one missed workout. Or maybe it was bigger. Either way, you didn't just fall off the plan. You collapsed. And the worst part wasn't the failure itself, it was the voice that came after it. The one that said you're not the kind of person who follows through. That discipline is for other people. That maybe you just don't have what it takes. So you tried harder next time. Set stricter rules. Woke up earlier. Cut out more. Pushed further. And it worked, until it didn't. Because here's what nobody tells you about the way most people build discipline. It's not a system. It's a cage. And eventually, every cage breaks the person inside it. If you've ever felt like self-discipline was a war you kept losing against yourself, this video is for you. Because the Stoics, Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus, Seneca, they understood something radical about the human will. Something that modern productivity culture has completely buried. Discipline, done right, doesn't feel like punishment. It feels like freedom. And by the end of this video, you'll know exactly why your old approach kept failing you, and how to build something that actually holds. If this is the kind of content that speaks to you, hit subscribe. We go deep here, philosophy, psychology, and the kind of practical wisdom that actually changes how you live. Now, let's get into it. Here are 7 Stoic lessons on discipline that doesn't break you. This isn't about pushing harder. It's not about waking up at 4 a.m. or eliminating all pleasure from your life. It's about understanding the architecture of the human will and building discipline on a foundation that can last. Are you ready? Lesson 1. Think about the last time you tried to be more disciplined. What was the first thing you did? You probably made a rule. No sugar. No phone in the morning. Work out every single day. No exceptions. You started strong. And somewhere in week 2, you broke the rule, and then you broke yourself. Here's the counterintuitive truth the Stoics discovered 2,000 years ago. Willpower is not a character trait. It's a resource. And like all resources, it runs out. Think of your self-control like a torch, not a switch. It doesn't turn on and off. It burns. And if you run it at full flame constantly, you won't have light when you need it most. The ancient Stoics called this understanding prudentia, practical wisdom. The recognition that how you spend your energy is as important as how much of it you have. Marcus Aurelius wrote in his Meditations, "Confine yourself to the present, not to the entire year of habits you've promised yourself, not to the perfect version of you in your head. Just this moment, just this choice." Think of someone like James, mid-30s, 2 kids, demanding job. James decided to overhaul his life: gym, diet, journaling, cold showers, no alcohol, reading 30 minutes a night. All at once. By day 9, he was exhausted and resentful, eating pizza at midnight and telling himself he had no willpower. But James didn't fail because he lacked discipline. He failed because he lit 5 torches simultaneously and was surprised when they all went dark. So here's your exercise. Write down every discipline you're currently trying to maintain. All of them. Then circle the one that, if mastered first, would make the others easier. Just one. For 30 days, that's your only commitment. Let the torch burn steady, not bright. Your discipline doesn't need to be loud. It needs to be alive. Lesson 2. When was the last time you did something hard? Not because you had to, but because you chose to. There's a difference, and it lives in your body. One tightens your chest. The other lifts it. Most people treat discipline like an obligation. a debt they owe to their future self. And debt is exhausting to carry. The Stoics had a different framework entirely. They called it prohairesis, the faculty of choice. The idea that your will is the only thing in this universe that is entirely, unconditionally yours. Here's the reframe. Discipline isn't something that happens to you. It's something you exercise. Like a muscle, yes, but more than that. It's the one domain where you are the sovereign, where no external force has jurisdiction. The metaphor that helps here is the helmsman. Imagine you're sailing. You don't control the wind. You don't control the waves. But you control the rudder. Discipline is the rudder. And the Stoics were obsessed with one question. Are you gripping it, or have you handed it to something else? Epictetus, a man who was literally enslaved and still wrote the most powerful philosophy of freedom ever recorded, said this: "Make the best use of what is in your power, and take the rest as it happens." Think of a woman named Priya. She works in a high-pressure finance role. For years, she tried to force herself to meditate using alarms, apps, accountability partners. It never stuck. Then one morning, running late, she sat in her car for 3 minutes before going inside. Not because she planned to, but because she chose to. She decided that was her meditation. Imperfect, irregular, entirely chosen. 2 years later, it's the most consistent practice in her life. Your exercise, for the next week, before you begin any disciplined habit, say, out loud or in your head, I choose this. Not, I have to. Not, I should. Those 2 words rewire something deep. Try it. Notice what shifts. No one can take away your choice. That's not a motivational phrase. That's Stoic metaphysics. Lesson 3. You've probably heard the advice. Visualize your success. Picture the goal. See yourself winning. And maybe it's helped. But there's a darker, more powerful technique the Stoics practiced that modern self-help almost never talks about, and it's the reason Stoic discipline was built to endure. The insight is this: if you only ever imagine success, you become fragile to failure. And fragile discipline isn't discipline. It's fantasy with a schedule. The Stoics called their technique premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of evils. Before you begin, you imagine what goes wrong. Not to fill yourself with dread, but to strip failure of its power to surprise you. Because the thing that breaks most people isn't the hard day itself. It's the shock of it. Picture a bridge. One bridge is built to hold the weight of a perfect, sunny, low-traffic day. Another is built to hold storms, floods, and 100 years of use. Both look the same on a calm morning. Only one survives the weather. Seneca wrote, "Let us prepare our minds as if we had come to the very end of life. Let us postpone nothing." This is a man who understood that comfort is not a foundation. Readiness is. Think about a marathon runner named David. During training, he only ever visualized crossing the finish line in triumph. Never the wall at mile 20, never the cramp, never the rain. Race day came, and so did the wall. He hadn't prepared for it mentally. He stopped. Not because his body failed him. Because his mind had no script for difficulty. Your exercise is this. Tonight, before your most important discipline tomorrow, spend 2 minutes writing down every reason it might not go perfectly. Be specific. Then for each obstacle, write one sentence. If this happens, I will. That sentence is your bridge support. That sentence is what holds. Discipline built for perfect days is decoration. Build yours for the storm. Lesson 4. Here's something almost nobody talks about in the discipline conversation. What do you do with your emotions? Do you suppress them, put your head down and push through? Or do you let them pull you off course? Most discipline systems treat emotion as the enemy, the obstacle, the weak spot. And that framing creates a quiet war inside you that never ends. Because here's the truth, you cannot out-discipline your emotions. You can only understand them. The Stoics were not emotionless robots, a massive misconception. They didn't say, feel nothing. They said, examine what you feel before you obey it. There's a name for the gap between feeling and action. The Stoics called it ascesis, practice, the daily training of pausing before reacting. Think of your emotions like weather. You wouldn't try to stop the rain. You wouldn't be angry at the fog. But you also wouldn't let a storm convince you the world had ended. You observe. You dress accordingly. You move through it. Marcus Aurelius, who ruled an empire, fought wars, buried children, and endured betrayal, wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." He wasn't saying ignore your grief. He was saying, don't let your grief govern. Think about someone like Maya. She's trying to build a writing habit. 3 days a week, no excuses. Then her relationship ends. The grief is real and heavy. Her old approach would have been, push through or abandon the whole thing. Instead, she opens her document and writes one sentence. Just one. Today is hard. She closes it. She shows up 3 days later. And the week after that. 2 years on, she has a finished manuscript. Not because she conquered her feelings, but because she stopped letting them have veto power. Your exercise: identify one emotion that regularly hijacks your discipline. Name it. Literally give it a name. When it shows up, say, hello, name. I see you. I'm going to act anyway. This sounds simple. It works because naming a feeling shifts you from the emotional brain to the observing brain. That shift is everything. Your feelings are real. They are not your commander. Lesson 5. What would you do if someone told you rest was a form of discipline? You'd probably nod politely and then go back to grinding. Because rest feels like weakness, like giving in, like the opposite of everything disciplined people are supposed to be. But here's the Stoic counterintuitive truth that took me a long time to understand. Recovery is not the opposite of discipline. It is a component of it. The Stoics were deeply interested in the concept of melody, deliberate practice as a daily, rhythmic thing. Not a sprint. A rhythm. They structured their days in cycles: action, reflection, rest, return. The idea that constant output equals virtue? That came later. That came from industrialization and capitalism, not from philosophy. Here's the metaphor. A bow. You've seen one. Compact, curved, lethal. What gives it power? The tension in the string. But here's what archers know. If you never unstring a bow, if you leave it pulled taut day and night, it warps. It loses its spring. It becomes useless. You are the bow. Lao Tzu, whose Taoist philosophy shares remarkable resonance with Stoicism, wrote, "In doing nothing, nothing is left undone. Not laziness. Strategic emptiness. The pause that makes the next effort possible." Consider the story of Thomas Edison, who gets celebrated for his relentless work ethic but is less often quoted on his famous afternoon naps, which he considered non-negotiable. Or consider elite military units whose training programs now mandate sleep schedules with the same discipline as combat drills. Because they learned, a sleep-deprived soldier makes worse decisions than a rested one. Discipline and rest are not opposites. They're a cycle. Your exercise: block one period of genuine rest each week. Not passive scrolling, not sleep, but deliberate recovery. A walk without headphones. Sitting with a coffee and nothing else. 20 minutes of stillness. Treat it as seriously as your most important task, because it is your most important task. Rest is not the reward at the end of discipline. It's built into it. Lesson 6. Let's talk about identity. Because this might be the deepest reason most discipline systems fall apart, and nobody talks about it. You wake up. You're tired. You don't want to do the thing. You ask yourself, do I feel like it? And the answer is no. So you negotiate. You delay. Maybe tomorrow. And this cycle repeats forever, because your decisions are based on how you feel in the moment, which is always imperfect, always shifting, always capable of a very convincing argument for staying in bed. The Stoics had a different question. Not do I feel like it, but who am I? This is the shift from motivation-based discipline to identity-based discipline. And it changes everything. Because feelings fluctuate. But identity, when you've deliberately constructed it, is stable. Think of identity like the banks of a river. The water, your energy, your mood, your motivation, will always move. Some days it flows fast. Some days it barely trickles. But the banks determine where it goes. Your identity is the banks. Epictetus said, "First say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do." That sequence matters. First, define who you are. Then act from it. Not the reverse. Think about someone named Carlos. He never described himself as a runner. He described himself as someone who was trying to run. That subtle framing made every skipped morning a confirmation of his identity. See, I knew I wasn't a runner. The day he shifted the self-description to, I am someone who runs, past tense failures became irrelevant data, not identity. He's run 4 half marathons since. Your exercise, write one sentence that begins, I am someone who. Make it specific to your discipline. Say it every morning for 7 days, before you start, not after you finish. Let it be the bank, not the water. Watch where the river flows. You do not rise to the level of your motivation. You fall to the level of your identity. Lesson 7. And here's the last lesson. The one that ties everything together. The one the Stoics considered the foundation beneath all the others. Why do you want discipline in the first place? And I mean really. Beneath the productivity goals. Beneath the aesthetics and the body and the career. What is it for? Because if your discipline isn't connected to something meaningful, something that points past yourself, it will always feel like punishment. You'll always be pushing a boulder uphill for no reason except the abstract idea that you should. The Stoic concept here is telos, your ultimate aim. The North Star that gives direction to every small daily choice. Marcus Aurelius, when he dragged himself out of bed every morning to serve an empire he hadn't asked for, wasn't running on willpower. He was running on purpose. On the conviction that his effort served something larger than his own comfort. The metaphor is architecture. You can have the best bricks in the world, the best mortar, the best tools, but without a blueprint, without knowing what you're building, you'll move bricks in circles forever. Purpose is the blueprint. Seneca wrote, with an urgency that still cuts across 2,000 years, while we are postponing, life speeds by. He wasn't scolding. He was grieving, and inviting you not to waste what he understood too late. Think of a woman named Una. She tried every discipline system available. Apps, journals, coaches, accountability groups. None of it held. Then she spent 3 hours one afternoon writing the answer to one question. What am I actually building? The answer surprised her. It wasn't the body. It wasn't the promotion. It was presence. The ability to be fully there for her daughter, her work, her own mind. Every habit she chose after that, she asked, does this serve that? If yes, it stayed. If no, it went. In 6 months, she had fewer habits than before, and held all of them with ease. Your exercise, tonight, write the answer to this question. What am I building with my discipline, and who does it serve? Keep your answer somewhere you see it daily. Let your purpose be the blueprint. Let your habits be the bricks. Discipline without meaning is just suffering with a schedule. Give it meaning, and it becomes something else entirely. It becomes a life. 7 lessons. One truth underneath all of them. Discipline that doesn't break you isn't built on force. It's built on understanding of your nature, your limits, your identity, and your purpose. The Stoics didn't teach self-control because they wanted you to suffer in silence. They taught it because they understood something profound. The only person who is truly free is the one who is not ruled by impulse, by fear, or by the weight of an undisciplined mind. UVE always had the capacity for this. You don't need more willpower. You need a better architecture. Now here's my question for you, and I genuinely want to know. Which of these 7 lessons landed hardest? Which one are you going to carry with you this week? Let me know in the comments. I read more than you think. And if this video gave you something, share it with someone who's been grinding themselves into the ground. They might need to hear this more than you do.